This is not medical advice for humans or animals, and it's for entertainment purposes only. All right. Sometimes I add a splash of vinegar, sometimes I don't. But it's spring. There is a higher risk of parasites. Little splash of water. So that's just to get the pellets wet. You could totally use a scooper that I forgot that I had here. Okay, so the pieces are moist. And I think I've got about a cup of diatomaceous earth left. I'm giving this to lots of goats. If you have just one you wanted to give extra attention to, that you were gonna feed aside, then, you know, it might be a tablespoon for a Nigerian dwarf. It might be a couple. From what I've seen, it doesn't hurt them, and this isn't like a daily thing. I give it randomly unless I see diarrhea, then I'll give it a couple times for a couple feedings in a row. Do you see the way that it sticks to the pellets? I'm gonna add a little bit more pellets for the amount of diatomaceous earth I have. So this is what I mean by wet. It's going to get more wet inside them, and some people believe diatomaceous earth does not work wet, but they are thinking of the insecticide use in the garden where you're worrying about an exoskeleton. So of course it needs to be dry when you're trying to work it into an exoskeleton so it can cut the soft body, but parasites inside do only have a soft body. They don't have exoskeletons. So you don't have to worry about it being completely dry. That's ridiculous. That's the general way that I do it. So they don't all tackle each other, I'm going to get a second pan and just divide this between the two and then feed it to them. So 3 of these are babies right there. And then we have 2 full Nubians. And then she's partial mini Nubian, but mostly Nigerian dwarf. And she's 100% Nigerian dwarf. And then there's a big buckling. And then she is mostly also Nigerian dwarf. Of course, they're crowding around the pan that got put in second because the grain is always better in the pan you didn't get first. There you go, so smart. Basically, after I've cooked or roasted a chicken without seasonings that aren't good for dogs, I take our chicken off, I stick the carcass back in with the bones and any remaining chicken, cook it a lot longer the way you would for bone broth till the bones are soft and you can stick them in a blender. You blend it up and that's got the skin and the broth, and then I add some diatomaceous earth, pour it into these cups and freeze. Okay, now for my experience in dealing with diatomaceous earth. So the ratios that you've seen and stuff, it's not a science. I don't have it down. You basically mix it in till it's an amount that you're comfortable with. If I do see a goat or a pig or a dog that is having any signs of worms, then their treatment is going to be different than the preventative approach. So I had a goat. We were actually getting ready to sell a goat. And so I took a sample from 4 from our herd just because I wanted to make sure, you know, they were leaving healthy and strong for the new farm, the new one guy. So one of the goats was from a different farm on his own, and he came back with a sample that was heavy load of worms and eggs and everything. So it was barber pole, and for his protocol, I gave him a couple drops of oregano essential oil for the first 2 or 3 days. Like I think the first 2 days I did it twice a day, just a couple of drops. And then the 3rd day, only once. And then the rest was just diatomaceous earth. I hit him with the oregano just because the vet seemed nervous when he said how heavy of a load it was. And so then we did just diatomaceous earth, and this was all for a total of 10 days. So he got the diatomaceous earth and oregano for 3 days, and then just diatomaceous earth for 7 days. And it was twice a day in the beginning, and then it went down to once a day, probably for like the last 5 to 7 days. So the first 3 days was when I was just a little bit more vigilant about it. I always watch their health and see how they're behaving. Then I took a follow-up sample to the vet, and it was so clean, he thought that I got it from the wrong goat. But I knew exactly who it was, with, you know, both times. The one that came back with the heavy load and the one that had the follow-up. That vet did not seem to believe me that diatomaceous earth worked. Then the following season, we had some babies that had some coccidia. He sent me home with the medication because that is something that I've seen talked about enough, taking baby goats down quickly, that I was prepared and willing to give them medication. But first, I wanted to see if the diatomaceous earth was enough. And I think I fed them, their mom, some stuff with oregano for 1 or 2 days for her to get that in her milk, but I'm not sure. For babies, I usually don't give them oregano orally because you don't want to turn them off or shock them to anything that might make them not want to take it later as adults. So I am pretty sure it was just diatomaceous earth for the babies. If not, the oregano oil for 1 or 2 days through the mom. But they ended up also getting a sample come back clear, and they no longer had scours. So I never needed to end up giving them the medication. And the vet was surprised that time again too. So all other times we have just witnessed the change for ourselves. I haven't taken a sample in every single time. If my dogs have softer stool or looking runnier, I give them just extra pup cups. And that's what we nickname our little frozen cups that you've seen. And then their poop returns back to normal. So we've used it for every animal on our farm, including the barn cats that we just sprinkle on their food and jiggle it, because cats, they just seem to be more resilient and they don't run around eating poop like dogs do. And the chickens, sometimes we mix that in. That's also infrequent. We've never really had an issue with our chickens, but if they have an immune system that's been compromised, like chickens that were attacked, you know, I would give them some like oregano oil or diatomaceous earth, a little extra, just as a preventative caution. So we're in our 3rd year, so I'm still a newbie, but it's the only thing I've ever done. I use apple cider vinegar very randomly. I don't remember to do anything faithfully. And as the diatomaceous earth thing, I'm just like, hey, it's been a while since I've done it. Sometimes they get it once a month. In the parasitic seasons, like when they're out on the fields and stuff, then we do. We started rotation grazing just last summer. Before that, we never did. So it was just the diatomaceous earth that we've done for our animals, and they're healthy and strong, and it works for them, and I'm grateful for it, and I think everybody should know about it. Don't be scared. Even if it doesn't make sense and there aren't studies, doesn't mean it doesn't work. Try it for yourself. Take a sample of a goat, do the treatment, take a sample follow-up. It's gone, and nothing else can explain it.